Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Paranormal Karen, funny too. Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Oh, and did I mention she's funny too? Yeah, cha-cha-cha.
Okay, everybody, welcome to Paranormal Karen. You are actually, Mark Pontius is here today, and you are going to be my first guest.
Guest? What does that mean?
If you hear growling, that's not Mark. That's Pappy the dog.
Sidekick.
Yes. So I always do a predictions podcast, and then I have Ryan do my astrology. He does that beginning of year in 6 months. So you would be my first out of the ordinary guest for 2023. So
Pappy
far,
ripped my mic off already.
see,
So we're setting the tone for the new
year. It's going to be work. Is mine right? Okay, I better take mine. All right. Most podcasts would do this before, but I'm not interested in that. So a couple of things. Oh, and first of all, folks, I should have my merchandise page up. So I should have Paranormal Karen t-shirts, and hopefully my new designs are up. And all the rest. Sign up for my email list because I'm doing a protection class with Tommy, which is going to be live, I believe, and then we'll sell it after. But just sign up for my email list at karenrontowski.com or rontowski.com. So many new things coming out. So, Mark, last time you were here, fantastic podcast about the trickster energy.
Yes, that's the rabbit hole I was down at that time. Yes.
Yes, and it was such a great and deep, thoughtful podcast. And then so two things today. One is I want to talk to you about your water system, because this is really interesting to me, because people here always hear me talking about the Berkey and stuff like that, but anything that gets, like, I'm on such a better eating kick, better water kick. And then I think we're just going to see what rabbit hole you're down today.
Cool. Yeah, I definitely down new rabbit holes. That's kind of, I don't know if I talked about this last time, but I'm sometimes all over the place with, I go down rabbit holes that are, I just obsess about it for like a month, and I put my whole perspective of life in that, knowing that it's going to be like kind of extreme and amplified, and then later it settles into more of a like real reality. It's not so extreme. So sometimes I'll be down, like, especially with Jessa, my partner, it's like I'll be down these rabbit holes and tell her, I'll just blabber to her every night about, oh my God, this is new, amazing. Everything's a simulation, you know?
Yeah.
And then the next month it'll be like, okay, wait, the earth is flat and we're going to take on that for a while. So it's intense. I'm definitely down like weird ones right now.
Well, you know, it's a funny thing, because I once you get that you're being lied to, which was the real definition of woke, everything's a lie. Mm-hmm. And once you really get into, you know, because if you were to walk up to someone on the street and say, hey, I was listening to this guy talking about the world is flat, and he made some good points. Not even like I believe it or whatever, but there's some weird things, right? They're like, oh, go away, right? They get really, but once you start to realize how much you are being lied to, yes, then you have an open mind towards everything.
Totally. And I find that to be so helpful. It took a while for me to get to that place. My critical factor wanted to poo-poo anything that was like not congruent with my new state of, you know, consciousness and how I was seeing the world. But I pretty quickly learned that there was no end to the seeking. You know, it really doesn't seem like there's ever an end. And there is a lot of manipulation and lies, whether purpose or not, that we have in the reality. And so it's, me and Jess are kind of at that state now where it's just so open-handed with everything, and just looking at them as ideas more than anything, more than beliefs. Somebody said this a while ago on a podcast, and I loved it, where he was like, I don't subscribe to beliefs because they kind of stay stagnant. And an idea is something you can take on and drop, you know, kind of continue going, just take one on for a little bit and drop it when it doesn't work and add something new to it.
I love that, because it's like I'm trying to never use the word never, or I'm with you on that, because there's so many, you know, I remember when I believed in ghosts, but I didn't know, or spirits, and I didn't know what else was out there. And then somebody starts talking about fairies, and I was like, what? But once you go aliens, fairies, whatever, the door's open. Now I can't tell you that I'm better than you because you believe in fairies and I don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. It's like, what can the perspective of fairies add to my current reality. I'm sure there's something, you know.
Yes. And then it's also funny to me. Well, I was always a paranormal person I always believed in the paranormal, so I didn't understand why people didn't or why they were just closed to it. But so first, tell me about, because you use hydrogenated water. Is that what you do?
Yeah. So I've been like, I think in part of the other thing in the seeking is like we come across, I think there's a lot of people across the board of all different types, scientists or artists that like are awakening to different levels of awareness, and they tend to start, you know, putting that perspective into their craft. And so I think we're seeing at the same time that I'm seeking more like spiritual knowledge or conscious based stuff, kind of the more abstract things, there are so many people that are creating or inventing new technologies that are leveling up in the system that aren't, you know, the accepted ways of physics and science. And so they're all kind of niche on the like fringe type ideas, but people that are more aware and realize that, they just work on that thing and then, you know, try to sell it under the radar or not patent it, things like that. And so that's, as a side thing, that I've been slowly finding more and more tech that is conscious based or more. Yeah, you got another bug.
I know, he was right on my neck. Is he still there?
Yeah. There he goes.
Okay, I'm collecting stink bugs.
We have stink bugs all over the house. So yeah, that's been a byproduct of some of this, that I keep finding out new things about our health, like tech-based things that are ways to either reverse some of the damage from GMOs or, you know, stuff in our water and things. And one of the ones I came across probably 2 years ago now was the Aqua Cure by George Weissman. I heard about it on Greg Carlwood's podcast, actually, the Higher Side Chats, which I'm an avid listener to. And I think it was about 2 years ago where I first heard about it, and I bought it immediately because they give it like a discount code on that podcast as well. It's kind of an expensive machine, but for people who don't know about it, it's essentially it's called Brown's gas. It produces Brown's gas, which is a hydrogen based gas. It's hydrogen and oxygen actually, but hydrogen, I didn't know this until listening to this podcast, that it's something that our bodies are basically like, I think it's 62% hydrogen. So it's a big part of our lives and our biological makeup, but we don't have clear sources to get it. You mostly get it through foods. It's in the last part of our digestion. And so sometimes we don't get enough if we have, you know, digestion problems from antibiotics or stuff with our stomach. We're not really picking up enough hydrogen, and it is in mostly like vegetables and stuff that's not in a lot of people's diets. So the basis is most people in the world are hydrogen deficient. And there have been many other, you know, ways to get hydrogen. It's kind of becoming popular. There's like tablets and other ways to get it. But this guy seemed to be really onto something new with the Brown's gas. It's kind of like an amplified hydrogen almost, in layman's terms, that really is helpful in a really broad general immune
Every time
function.
my hair touches me now,
Yeah,
I think that's
I'll let you know if there's another one crawling on you.
I was like, okay.
It's trying to get on the podcast.
Yeah, I think I'm okay.
So yeah, it's something that's pretty general, like in health. It helps boost a lot of your immunity. When we are hydrogen efficient, we have enough, your immune system is actually like pretty radically capable of curing, almost anything. So there's a lot of stories from his people that have used it that are from small things like scars, like people have had really gnarly scars from motorcycle accidents, something they've had their whole lives, and they start breathing in this hydrogen gas, and in months to, you know, maybe like a really bad one, maybe a year of doing it, completely goes away.
Wow.
And the idea of that is that, you know, our immune system, if it's not hydrogen efficient, it's putting a lot of things on hold that it's going to try to fix because there's other things to keep the body going. And like cell regeneration on your skin is something that it's going to put a temporary scar in there to just make it, you know, be okay and not bleeding or anymore, and then keep the rest of the immune system functioning. So if you have enough hydrogen, things like that have been on back order with your immune system for a long time are going to start to regenerate and heal.
Now that's interesting, because the problem a lot of people were having with COVID was their hair fell out because of how much either energy or whatever it takes to grow hair, or how much nutrients, and the body was like, no, we need them here.
Yeah. Well, and he has a lot of, he tries, on the interviews that I heard, it's very secretively talked about. They don't try to talk because he's not a doctor, so he can't really talk on things with the shot, but he does allude to a lot of helpful things that come from the Brown's gas for mitigating things with COVID or the shot, which is interesting to hear too. But understanding the machine, like if you listen to the podcast, you can get a really great general overview, or going to his website.
And it's one machine. You like by Berkey, you got to buy filters once a year. It's one machine. It's done. It does it all the time.
Does it all the time, and it's what's pretty incredible about it is that it's pretty simple mechanics on the inside. He actually sells a book on how to make it. He's very into giving this technology out to everyone that he can. So you can buy the machine, but you can also buy the book and build it yourself. It's not super simple, but enough. I'm not like an engineer, and I feel like I understand how it's functioning. And it's pretty simple.
That's one of those things, though, that I would try it. I go, I'm going to save, because it's like between $2,000 and $3,000, right? But it's for life.
It's actually like $4,000, I think. There's a discount code to get it for cheaper. I think,
okay, because I would go, well, that's like when I buy a T-shirt and I go, I can sew this.
Yeah.
And it's never.
No, well, and this thing, he's got like a lifetime warranty on it, and you just have to take care of it generally, but it's something that uses lye as a part of the activator that makes the hydrogen gas on the inside. It's like these cathode, anode, geeky tech stuff, but relatively simple, really. And it used lye as the activator, and lye is a very you
poisonous?
Can't get mold in lye and stuff.
Oh yeah,
it's just highly corrosive. I mean, not corrosive.
Corrupt. Yeah.
It's you can do some dark things with it. It can make bones go away. I think that was early in the 80s.
Are we doing that later? Are we doing that tonight?
Early in the 80s, it was known to be something that you could get rid of bodies with. But it'll break down. You have to be careful when you're using the lye, what kind of containers you have it in and stuff. It heats up. But the fact that that's in there is something that, mold can't grow in it. The only thing you have to clean it out every now and then. But other than that, George Weissman's been using the same machine with the same lye, because you can take the lye out and reuse it, and it actually makes it better, more activated for hydrogen. He's been using the same one since the 80s or something.
So it fixes your water. You guys have the best water, and you have 2 jugs of it, and it so that you always have 2 jugs there, so that you always have something to drink. And then breathing it, so it does 2 things, right?
Yeah. So you can take it in multiple ways with the machine. You can put it in your water. We just drink hydrogenated water. So you have to distill water as well. That's why we have a kind of a big machine area in our kitchen, because there's a distiller and the hydrogen machine. Okay. You can just buy distilled water, but it's a little bit more cost effective. Then you're still buying water. Yeah, but see, we're just now taking our tap into the distiller and distilling that and then putting it in. So we use that to drink it. We mostly cook with distilled water as well, just to not have anything from the tap. And then you can breathe it in. I think it's something, if you have a really big issue, you're trying to fight a cancer or a really bad immune function type thing. I think he says something up to 8 hours a day breathing it, which you can sleep with the thing on. So that would be one way to do it. But as just general upkeep, I think it's an hour a day, 30, 40 minutes a day or something, which is usually what me and my partner do. When Jessa, my partner, had Lyme, though, she was doing it a lot and seemed to get a lot of...
Is it like a... what's that? A
face mask?
Face mask?
No, it's just a little tubes in your
nose. Nose thing.
Looks like an oxygen thing. And so that's one way to do it as well, is just breathe it in. And then you can do it on topical things on skin. The way he discovered it was somebody, I think, hydrogenated water in a cap, put it in a water bottle cap, and taped that cap to a melanoma cancer thing on his forehead, and got rid of the melanoma in a couple months. And that, so you also can put it, the gas or hydrogenated water on your skin to heal external things.
Interesting.
And attempt it that way. You can bathe in it. You can put the bubbler like in the bath, and so you can hydrogenate the water that you bathe in.
I gotta take another look at it when we're upstairs, because I find all this stuff is. So if I ever owned a house, I probably would have all of this. This would be the kind of stuff. I would like an off-grid house, but whatever. You know, I don't even want a house. I don't know why I'm telling you I want an off-grid house. I don't know what I want. I want to find someone with an off-grid house that dies and leaves it to me with my water,
There you go.
hydrogenated water.
Already set up and ready to go. All the hard work done.
But I feel like these are the little things that people kind of need to know. Would it work on, because the Berkey says it works on contaminated water. Like you could put pool water in a Berkey and get clean water out the other side.
No, this isn't really the same thing.
The distiller might do that though, right?
Yeah, so the distiller will get rid of a lot of things. Like that gets rid of the most basic things in the tap. I wouldn't think you could put like Coca-Cola in the distiller and get fresh water. But it's not so much like the way a filter acts. This is like kind of one step further, that it is adding hydrogen gas into the water, which is an important thing to have in your body. If you drink water from like a running stream over rocks, there's minerals in the rocks and dirt and stuff that create hydrogen, because there's hydrogen's abundant in the earth. So you would get it more so that way. So this is to kind of mitigate just the way that we have to have public water. You know, it's chlorinated and fluoride, all the stuff that's in there that is supposed to be good to keep all the bad bacteria out is actually long-term. You're not getting the right minerals, and it's actually causing, other problems in your body. So it's more to kind of, the distilling is the filtering aspect, just from the tap water you can only put distilled water in the machine.
So you're getting it to a base.
Yeah. And just getting it to the base level of the water, and then hydrogenating that, which is it acts as like electrolyte, essentially, I think the one thing we're figuring out is that you can be, and I might not be right on this with the actual science behind the hydrogen and that machine, but we tend to put some minerals in the water. You can buy like basic minerals in a like bottle type thing, and we have been doing that because we heard from a doctor that there is potentially, if you're distilling water, you're just getting it so rid of any kind of good minerals.
It gets everything out of it.
You want some of that. So we've been experimenting with that, but in general, I've been using the machine for close to 2 years, and for the first year, we had it there was a gas leak in it slowly that we thought wasn't a big deal. But as I fixed that gas leak and we've now been using it, it's been way more powerful. And in general, for me, like the way you definitely, like he recommends before you start using the machine to make a list of all the little things that are, even if they're minor, that you have, like psoriasis or dandruff or, losing hair or where the scars are. And to take note, because you'll pretty quickly start to see some effects. And some people just forget, like, oh, I think I had a scar here, but maybe I don't now. So for me, I've definitely, the biggest things, I'm going to have had some scarring that's gone away, small scars. And then in general, there's a lot more energy that I seem to be able to stabilize like longer during the day. And the water it's hard to describe, but it just feels like you're getting more hydrogenated from it. I mean, that's cheesy because it's hydrogen, but it's like it's more liquid or something. It's very smooth, and it's not, you hydrate really quick. You feel like it goes from your head to your toes.
Well, we had this discussion today, and because I noticed when I was using the Berkey, when I went from like whatever I was using, I was trying every other water filter because I didn't want to spend $300 on a Berkey, but then I did, and then the difference is huge. In fact, I keep saying I want the Berkey filter for the shower, but it's not my house right now, all kinds of things. But so especially probably the last 2 years, I think I've had my Berkey 2 or 3 years. going to the bathroom all the time.
Yeah.
Like in the bathroom all
Runs
the time.
through you, yeah.
And then today I went out to lunch and I was drinking. They said they had filtered water, which I know it's probably still.
What kind of filter you got on there? You have to ask all these
They
questions.
have that at the gym, and I'm like, does it filter out fluoride? And it's like, I don't know. Yeah, then no, it doesn't. But I had some of that water, and I realized how much I drank, and that I wasn't going to the bathroom all the time. And you had an answer for that.
Yeah, and I just learned that this morning because I am down a little bit of rabbit hole again on the hydrogen because George Weissman was on Higher Side Chats again. And so I was listening to that this morning, and he had a bunch of updates on new discoveries with the machine he already built. And one of the things was, I don't know too much about it, but I'll try to just like brisk over it, is that for one thing, I did notice when I started drinking the hydrogen water and got used to it at home and like hadn't had tap water for a while, when I did go out to a restaurant and did drink tap water, I immediately could smell the chemicals that I had never smelled before because I was now sensitive to it. Yeah, it smelled like a light chlorine, and then I did. It tasted heavier in a weird way. It didn't like. It kind of bloats you a little bit more, and it seems to sit in your system longer. And I never really knew what that was. I assumed it was because there was some chemicals in there, or whatever. But listening to him this morning, he had this new thing about deuterium. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
I hadn't really either, but apparently it's something that's in our water that we get from the city mostly that I'm not sure how it gets there or if it's a natural thing. There's some science behind it. It's like it has an extra electron in it or something that causes, I think in our body, it just doesn't allow us to absorb water in the same way.
Oh, that makes sense.
And so there's a new craze about people trying to get deuterium-free water, like so it doesn't have deuterium in it, which right now is pretty expensive, I guess, to buy those bottles of water. So it's kind of another like new craze that's kind of been hijacked into a capitalistic model. But
yeah, I have the Berkey Sport bottle, but it's a little tough to use, and I like a small suitcase. But it also on the airplane it forces the water out like it doesn't seal. I don't know why, because it's plastic or something. The pressure from the airplane, I always have water all over, so I haven't mastered it yet. But yeah, I think bottled water used to be able to look up the bottled waters that didn't have fluoride, and now
it's just hard to, who knows what's, even if the water's sitting in a plastic bottle for how long, like what's going into the water, what kind of container. I mean, aluminum, like for a while they were putting water in aluminum thinking it was better, like the Deja Blue on certain flights. I always had like aluminum cans. I thought that was nice, but aluminum's a huge thing. Aluminum going into anything that we're like into our body. You know, there's enough aluminum. We're getting aluminum in a lot of our foods and medicines, pesticides. So anything we can do to like cut that down, not have it in your food, even as simple as like, you know, we've had Coca-Cola cans and everything in aluminum for a while, or the bubbly water in aluminum cans. It's seeping slowly into that water. So I've tried to, as I learn these things, it's very difficult, but you try to do your best to avoid it when you can. So like no more aluminum foil, things like that. But back to the hydrogen machine and deuterium is that one other thing with this AquaCure is it was originally made off of a Brown's gas that this guy developed for a couple other uses, and one of them was a more efficient torch to cut things with, metal and you know high caliber torch. And this is one of the magical things about this machine that like is the thing that sucked me in too, was that, and I'm just beginning to understand the science, so forgive me if I botch this, but you can, the original Brown's gas machine was a much bigger torch, and so you could cut like it was a bigger flame that came out, so it was more useful. With the AquaCure, you can get a torch, like adapter kit, and I think it's a much more smaller torch. I have the torch out now to set it up and try some things, but you can cut metal with it. And the crazy thing about it is that it's a torch. It's not going to really make sense, but it's made from water. Like it's essentially like a cold flame kind of. Oh. And the way it's cutting is the chemical reaction from that flame towards something else that ideally doesn't have any water in it. If there's water in it, the flame doesn't cut. So there's examples on his website that you can hold that flame up to your hand and put your finger through it, like run your finger, and it doesn't burn you at all. And then you take it to another metal or even like porcelain. They did tests on stuff out on the outside of the space shuttle, and it cuts right through it.
Wow.
And it's like a laser cut. It's like way better than even a welding machine or a normal torch cutter. So
wow.
That idea then has led to this other discovery just recently where using the torch, and if you can catch the ash from that or the steam, well, first the ash from, and I'm not exactly sure how you can do this, but depending on what you're burning, you can get a residual ash from it. And that ash is then deuterium free. And so as a way to get that into water, essentially, you can then burn that and steam it and get the, distillation from that and have deuterium free water for half the price.
Wow.
You have to have a bigger torch, I think, to do it. So that's one way to get deuterium-free water, which is a powerful thing as well for health. But another caveat side to that I want to try to experiment with, because if I understand it correctly, it's a pretty big deal. And it's one of these things where it's just to back up a little bit more real quick, when we're discovering these new technologies,
mm-hmm.
I get the sense I've gone down a couple of rabbit holes where I'm like, oh shit, this is the avenue towards free energy or anti-gravity stuff. And you can see when people, they're getting really close to just going, oh shit, because a lot of this new tech is consciousness based. It's you have to study life force, your life, and you kind of have to be healed to start using it properly. Because once we get a further part of this tech, it can also be used as a weapon. And so there's it's a very hard thing to watch when I'm watching very smart people. This has happened time and again in our history where they discover, hydrogen powered car or fuel
mm-hmm.
cars or water based cars or anti-gravity, free energy. And those people either disappear or the science gets kiboshed.
That's a great place. I'm going to take a break and we're going to come right back. And there's a couple things with that. And we're back in conspiracies. Okay, hold on.
Many people are unaware just how much hypnotherapy can help them, or think it's only to help lose weight or quit smoking. But there is so much more hypnotherapy can do. It can help with stress, anxiety, insomnia, phobias, performance enhancement, connecting with your spirit guides and higher self. You can even discover past lives and your life between lives. Heal traumas, break habits, find your deepest truth, or just have fun discovering who you really are, all from the comfort of your home. I'm Monique Pliakis. I'm a certified hypnotherapist, and I want to help you. Schedule a free consult by going to www.innerstandingshypnosis.com. That's INNERSTANDINGSHYPNOSIS.com. Innerstandings Hypnosis. Find your power and ignite your inner light.
All right, so before we even get down the rabbit hole, that happened in Syracuse. There was one of those shootings that some guy went into a grocery store. I don't remember if it was a Price Chopper or a Hannaford. And the first thing he did was shoot the security guard and then sort of randomly went through the supermarket. And it was one of those shootings. Oh, it's terrible. And then it turns out the security guard was just on local TV. You can look this up. He had created an engine that ran on water, and he was telling them about it. And they were like, why would someone drive 200 miles to shoot up a Price Chopper? They're not even from that area. And they just happen to hit the guy. You know what I mean? It's I know it can be a stretch, but that's such a really.
Yeah. And so that's why, I'm even hesitant to talk about it as sideswiped as I am. I'm not in any kind of, I'm not experimenting.
You're not in a rush to make it. Yeah.
I'm not experimenting with this stuff because I haven't had time, and I'm just extremely interested, but I realize the touchiness of it. And it's been interesting to watch because I can start to understand what some of these inventors are going after. And then you can see that they're on the right tip. I can briskly understand the science and physics behind it enough that I'm like, oh shit, that really seems like that works. Again, not having experience with myself, I don't know. And I don't think I'm going to try to do that. But
And
it's interesting to watch that, like, we're getting closer. There are more and more layman people that are not physicists for life, studied forever, that are finding this stuff. And I think it's just a matter of time until like enough people start inventing things on their own, because a lot of it you can do with like stuff in your house or just a very small budget. And it's not something that I think is
the government's not going to trace that everybody, the 5 guys that bought these 3 things or something like that.
Well, potentially, but there's something that I do think that, you know, when you're starting to you're messing with some of these things, it's consciousness based, first and foremost, I believe. And there is an energy that you have when you're messing with it or trying to create it. And that is of prime importance, I believe. And I do believe there's also a connection to when we start to get to a certain place of evolution and discovery in these techs, that when you turn one on, let's say it's anti-gravity or something, and you fire it up and it works, and you're like, oh shit. It feels like to me that sends a signal somewhere that goes, hey, somebody they opened it. We need to locate them. And then they'll slowly come, you know, do what they want to do. Whether they want to just ask questions and go, oh, cool, befriend you and just keep an eye, or they want to come, you know, get rid of you. And it's not something to be as scared of. It's just something that I think it needs a lot of consideration when starting to go play with it. And like I said, the first and foremost thing is your state of consciousness, your intention, your healing. Have you healed everything in your body? And I think the combination of these things is a tech science-based physics thing, but it's also a life force. It's also like the groundwork of why we're here and how we're here. And so I think that it's just, I've watched a couple people go down it, and then they all of a sudden get either the
something
science,
weird happens in their life.
Something weird happens, or they even go a little like, get into a little bit of psychosis and lose the thread of what they were following, or their science gets debunked.
I have so many theories on this. There's this guy that has a great YouTube channel, and his name is Tom Montauk. I don't know if that's his real name. So great, but then makes music. But I can no longer find the interviews where he was talking, because he has hours and hours of music, so I can't quite find the other interviews that I wanted to hear. But he talks about how, say everybody is a car on this freeway, and then you see an exit that's like free energy or paranormal, and you take that exit. It's like sort of the beings. I think he's talking more of a, it's not an Illuminati. He might be talking about, but it's like then the attention goes, hey, one car got off the freeway. We better keep an eye on that car. Whereas they don't mind the other cars that are all in that lane. I think that is so true. There was a guy on TikTok, a professor. I got to find this and do this for my Patreon. There was a professor, somebody, and he's a young guy, African-American guy, dressed very strange, funny voice, doing these huge experiments in his backyard that were just mind-blowing. He had like millions and millions, and they took all of a sudden he disappeared. All of a sudden his account was gone because he was doing that kind of stuff. But you know, I wonder if we've, because even then there was the guy that created the Organite box where you would go in 20 minutes and your cancer would be cured. And then he was suddenly arrested or something. Oh, that's different. Yeah. Or Tesla's stuff, all gone. I think the collective right now is building a much stronger force, that this information out there, or even the fact that there is this Higher Side Chat podcast, I think those people are starting to find each other, and hopefully we're getting out of that.
Yeah. And there's as a like lofted and woo-woo this is going to sound, I do have in some of my other seeking in other areas more on a galactic level. I'd say that, you know, we have to assume that there is, once you get to a certain place of seeking and awakening and widening your awareness, you start to realize, okay, we're definitely not alone in this universe, and there are other dimensions to seek to resonate into. And that there are other beings that have already done this. And so all along this path, there are, I wouldn't even say, I don't want to say higher beings, but it's like wider beings, wider awareness. And so therefore they are above in the way that they can see more what's going on. And so if you just scale that up, you can say, And I think all along for a bit, there's good and bad. And they have more influence into this dimension of awareness. And so I think that there has been a long time, that we have been mostly run by this, you could say darker, but it's just more like distorted and in some ways very necessary for this whole process. It's a dualistic element that we need tension to seek for something better. And so you have to kind of be in a quote unquote, feels like a jail, or as a slave type thing that then allows this seeking process and to grow out of that and move by it. And I don't think it's defeated via like physical warfare or like explosion type things. It's a you have to resonate higher, and then it doesn't control you anymore.
Well, you know what else is interesting about that? Because there's the one hand, I feel like people can see the puppet strings, but then when I get out of my circles and I'm just out talking to people, they don't, they're just not. Because I know Jessa doesn't watch the news at all, and I know you and I kind of like it from an outsider's point of view, but on the other hand, free speech is just getting crushed left and right all of a sudden, which is weird to think that this day and age, but it is.
Well, and I think that's been, obviously some kind of, it's like a plan, or it is an effect that is happening at this point of evolution as an attempt to try to stop people from expanding their awareness. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't, I'm not really looking at it anymore as there are this abstract they that are doing this to us, whether that's, people call it the elite, which I think is not a good term to use because you're giving them, words are magic. You're saying they're
Illuminati.
elite.
Is Illuminati?
Yeah, but it's just so, that word is so heated now. You can't use that. I just am starting to look at it as, I'm thankful for it in a lot of ways because I can see why it's necessary for growth. But I do believe at certain points when there is enough people start to resonate higher, it weakens that thing. And then also, where I was originally going to start with this was that I have reason to believe, like from reading some books, that the big part of that thing that you would say is the distorted element trying to keep people from not knowing certain things and keeping knowledge hidden. The main part of that is like seeding down the distortion, is no longer in full control. There has been something that has happened on a higher level that we got to a certain point, and that thing is now gone. But as I've heard somebody else say, I think it's a great metaphor, just like if you have a tick in your arm and you pull the tick out, you've gotten the tick out, but there could be something else that's still in there, Lyme disease, Bartonella, whatever, that you then have to start to try to heal that and get that out. And I would say for that metaphor, what we're still dealing with is programming of fear and not having authority, self-authority, and not having individualized consciousness. So that's something that I think is still, we still feel that there's something that is stopping us, but it's the collective fear together that we're still addicted to the fear. We're still addicted to giving our authority up and looking for somebody else outside of us to give us the answers
for us. Yeah.
And so with that being said, going back to our original decision, I do think that there's a place that we're getting to that you maybe don't have to be as careful anymore. But I still think you have to be careful with your own consciousness and where you're at, because when you start to play with these newer ideas of physics and tech, that's going to be a very big part of it. And that's also why you can't just like give free energy and anti-gravity to a bunch of beings that are not ready for it, because it becomes very dangerous. And so you can see how there's, from one perspective, oh, the damn they aren't letting us see the knowledge and have the tech to have utopia. But are we ready for that in the places that we've been on this low density, obsessed with fear and all these external things? No, because it would be used nefariously. So the feeling is that it's still not like, free speech is still being suppressed a lot. And that's something that is happening on the outside, whether that's Twitter doing that or somebody above it. But I do think that it's more important to seek with courage and if your craft is electronics and physics, there's something there that's outside of the world of how electronics and physics were taught in school.
Right.
But there's like half truths there. So there are a lot of valuable things, but you have to have a really open mind about what is going on in the conscious and more fringe areas of those crafts. And I think that it's good to experiment and try to figure things out. But once you do get to a place where you're like, oh, I think I got something, it's good to have precaution and not try to go blast it out to everybody and share it to everybody to save the world, because you're dealing with bigger energy that's trying to not have that come.
Yeah.
So you have to be really tactful. And I've seen a number of people, like I said, like go down that trail and then find something and think, I have to get this to the government. I have to to patent this. I have to make money off of this. Those are all old world things that are not going to help you. And so it's about trying to figure it out for yourself and then figuring out with your intuition as a healed being what the best avenue is. And sometimes it's just keep your mouth shut and continue to work with it, find trusted people, but don't go for the gold and try to get famous off of it, because this is the old way to do it. We're not moving into a reality that I think that's going to have any value. And you're sticking out, you're putting a flag up and saying, hey, come get me, you know? And so this hydrogen machine, this thing that I discovered this morning, is like hearing George Weissman talk about it. He even said, he was like, I haven't talked about this because I don't have something on my site that can actually give clear examples and show you how to do it. And sounds like he's a little sensitive on just saying it publicly.
Which I don't blame him.
Yeah. And I think when he created this Brown's gas a long time ago and was fixing gas mileage in cars first, and then creating a really powerful torch, and then creating hydrogen water. And it's a really valuable line he's taking. He has said that he's had many hiccups along the way, whether that be black coats coming to him or trying to shut him down in many ways. But he figured out his own thread and is able to still continue doing it without being affected by that. And one reason is he's not trying to go to the top with it. He's giving out the blueprint on how to make it yourself. He's making sure everybody has the stuff, and he's trying to get it to everybody he can. So it's what he was, I'll just say the brief of it. And if people get what I'm putting down, then you can just go research it more. But the short of it is, with that torch as well, if you take that torch from the hydrogen gas, so you're just pure hydrogen gas, Brown's gas is what it is. It's not just hydrogen. It's better than that, we'll say. When the reaction happens, it's hydrogen. There's a block of these two electrodes. It's hydrogen and oxygen, and they mix. And then when he was doing that, there's a third thing that comes forth, and it's this gas. It's this Brown's gas, and it's in a combustible gas form. And so he puts that into the torch. Now, if you take that torch and you burn something, ideally, I'll go back to this in a second, but ideally, if you put it towards water, towards clean distilled water, and steam it and catch the steam, so you kind of distill it again, but it's from the torch is putting the gas into it. You essentially are creating living water, and that's something, if you know what that is, this is you need to do more research on knowing exactly what living water is. It's essentially imprintable. It's programmable. On a basic level, we know water is programmable. It's programmable. It's conscious. It's the same thing as crystals. It's a powerful place. Consciousness can sit in that when it is properly organized. So you have to have it spiraled or whatever. But this is even more than that. This is water that is what you could say is at its most pure place to be programmed. So you're not dealing with, when you have tap water, you got all kinds of shit in there. It's not spiraled, so it's not what's the word? It's not fractal. It's not in coherence. And so you would have to do a lot of unprogramming, distilling constantly like this. This is all alchemy, by the way. If anybody knows about alchemy, when I said hydrogen and oxygen mixed together, there's a third component. There's an alchemical thing happening in this. And I don't think he meant to do this. So it's he did, but as he's had it, he's slowly discovering more things. And that's what this thing that happened. And he talks about it on the last Greg Carlwood podcast. And it's fascinating because he does drop a couple bombs that lead you to believe that this
is the higher chats,
the higher side chats. It's like one of his latest episodes, the George Weissman Aqua Cure. And if we, the earth makes, here's just one more caveat to kind of point you to it a little bit more without saying it, is that the earth makes this as well in its natural form, and it's mostly through rivers. And so there was this thing that I didn't know this until listening, but apparently there have been studies in the past that when they used to go mine gold and get gold out of rivers, they could pull the gold out and then, clean it all out, get all the gold, and then come back. I'm not sure how much time, but come back and there'd be more gold in that place. It's either gold or copper, but essentially showing you that the earth, when it releases this process and there's living water in it, the living water goes over this certain area of the river that is rich in these metals within the earth, and it pulls them out and creates them. So living water is something that's imprintable with your consciousness, and it's essentially a very powerful tool. It's like Philosopher's Stone type stuff.
You just reminded me of this person that this is this place where science meets metaphysics, and I love it. Where this person was saying he whispers what he wants in whatever he's drinking, which is probably living water. I'm sure it would happen faster or something, but that's his manifestation. He whispers into what he's drinking, what he wants to happen, and then it becomes him. And
I do that too. I've started to I stir even the hydrogen water that is at its highest base of health. I still spiral all of my drinks just to get it into form.
Oh, and you're saying you stir them like that?
Yeah, because spiraling like that, I mean, I think there's probably, there are devices that do a perfect spiral. So when you're just spiraling with your spoon, yeah, probably. But I don't know if it just feels like when I'm doing it, I'm spiraling it with intention and love as well. But that spiral vortex that happens is something, the shape of the cup has to do with it and everything, so that you're not always necessarily going to get the perfect fractal spiral that perfectly harmonizes all of those electrons in the water. But I still think that we're getting there, and like there's a lot of experience online of really cool stuff. This woman that took water and would put it in a petri dish and put it in the freezer and put a picture next to it. And in the crystallization of the petri dish as it freezes, there's like the crystals show the image of the photo.
Oh, I got to try that.
And I think you do have to be particular with like clean water, very pure water. And I don't think this woman was doing this with living water. I think it would probably be even more powerful. But
well, the one time I had trouble with a guy, this is what I've done this quite often when I have trouble with anyone, is you write their name on a piece of paper and you put it in water and you put it in the freezer and it freezes their action. Doesn't make anything bad happen to them, but freezes them away from you.
Interesting. I know there's a lot of, I mean, I've been down many rabbit holes of water, and it is so fascinating how something that's so basic to our lives and so, integral to our health, that the power of it is more than just putting it in our body and getting liquid. There's like so much potential there. However, the water is not harmonized. It's out of place. And so we're not even getting the most benefit from it.
That's why we have to drink so much. And we didn't used to have to drink so much.
Yeah.
It was funny because I told my friend to do that. She was an older lady and she froze someone's actions. And then her granddaughter comes out one day and goes, "Why is Mary Jo in the freezer?"
That's so funny.
All right, we're going to take a break and come back. I think we're already down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Ashley, and Prithvika is my collection of consciously created crystal and nature-forged jewelry. Prithvika translates to of the earth in Hindi, which represents the natural earth-made materials I'm working with, along with my personal ancestry and grounded energy. Each piece is created through ceremony and science, and completed with being Reiki charged. I'm currently featuring copper mirror necklaces, which can be used for protection and mirror magic. My intention is for your new piece of jewelry to feel like an extension of self, to help bring your desires to fruition and to amplify the magic within you. My Instagram is @prithvika, and my website is prithvika.com. That's PRTHVEEKA.com.
So we're just saying how there's so many things I want to learn and so many things I just want to focus on and get done. And okay, so if we could do this in 20 minutes, what is your rabbit hole right now, other than the water?
Other than the water, well, the water is kind of on the back end of this other rabbit hole I was down, and it's essentially like off the back of a feeling that I had a long time ago when I did some psychedelics. I did like a big heavy dose trip, and was going in for something else. I had a different intention at the time, I think, and I can't even remember which one it was. But there was some exploring I was doing, and or it might have even been the first couple times I did a big trip. I remember at a certain point feeling like, oh, this like life is electronic, or it's electric, or it's electricity. It was kind of, I was like, why does this feel, before I had done an experience, I did a lot of research, and you always have your preconceived notion of what like a hallucination is going to be, or what are these visions, what are they going to look like. So you kind of drum up what it might be in your head. And then when it happens, it's always like, whoa, I didn't think it was going to be that. And it was very like surprising to me and not scary. There was some definitely like psychosis, mental illusions and like hallucinations that happen that are really radical because you kind of feel it more than anything. Mm-hmm. But I just remember going like seeing the way, outside, if you're in that altered state, plants and things of the earth seem to be obviously fractal in that way that it like looks like a grid, and it kind of like sparkles, and it has this like, it looks like electricity's moving through it.
My friend had a near-death experience. Not even her blood pressure just went low, and she fell back. She's fascinating. She just fell back like this, and she could see the Matrix. And she wasn't psychedelics or nothing. And she kept popping out and telling her boyfriend for like 12 hours, write this down. And it was all this information she didn't have access to. It was all scientific stuff and stuff that she would have no way to know. And then she'd go back, like she describes, like she'd lean back and then she'd come back forward. And she said it just looked like green balls. Everything was green balls. And when you thought this green ball lit up that green ball, like it was just exactly like that.
And so that's what I think when that happened, I started to try to unpack that when I came back down, and through years now, I've just always had this feeling. I was like, why does it feel electronic? That part of me after a while was like bummed, because I was like, I thought, I was like on the path of being vegan and vegetarian and like really tuning back into nature. I've always felt connected, but I felt like that, like nature is organic. It's like soil. It's like this earthy feel. And then I know electricity to be the computer and the phone and the stuff that's distracting us. And so I was like, wait, no, I can't. It's not can't be electronic. Like,
oh, interesting.
I keep saying electronic like it's a race car, like
you got to
toy.
plug them in. Yeah.
But it's electricity. Like it can't be that. And then the more I kept seeking and finding different rabbit holes of it, things started to align where you then kind of get to the simulation theory, and you're like, oh, okay. These metaphors for simulation totally align with a lot of this ancient history of spirituality and esoteric stuff in a very weird way. It takes a minute to get there, but then you're like, damn, this shit really lines up. And then it lines up with video gaming and all these other metaphors of consciousness and how you project what your thoughts like show you what shows up in the reality. It's like it affects the material world. And so then it started to align that I was like, okay, so the plants there's electricity in there, not the same electricity we're plugging the walls, but life force is electric.
Chi. Yeah.
If you think about chi, or like even the feeling of an orgasm is like a spark, electric, it takes you over and you shake or whatever is happening, altered states. Can we mention like the psychedelics specifically?
You can mention whatever you want on this. I don't edit.
I just don't want to like get people think. I mean, I've had trauma of people thinking I'm totally insane for doing psychedelics, but I don't really have those people around me anymore, so it's all good.
No, and you can't. My people have heard everything about me, so
yeah. Okay, so
you can't sound crazier than me.
It's when I took DMT for the first time, the experience, the feeling of the first embarkment. You know, there's a white flashlight and all that stuff, but there's a feeling, and you kind of have to.
That's a dog leash, by the way. If you're hearing jingling, sometimes people call me. There's a ghost rattling chains in your podcast
with sleigh bells.
Yeah,
Santa ghost.
Okay, go ahead.
That DMT experience was, I had heard about it and was like, okay, you got to take the bright light to move to the next thing. I got this. I can take bright light because I know it's not really real or whatever. And then I'm gonna take this off. And then when I had the experience, it was as if a jet flies into the building, and you actually have to take that energy. So that white light and this flash and the sound, all of it is so overwhelming that there was a whoa, my energetics are not set up to hold this. Wow. You know, I got through it, but it was just whoa, I'm being run over by it. And that experience as well was another thing where I was like, it is electricity. Like, there's something that is within us that can really be looked at through a electrical engineering perspective or just electronics, and you can understand a lot. As well, for me with music, there's a lot of compatibilities with that, because music is about waveforms and phasing, harmonics. These are all electronic terms. I mean, they're very similar.
Frequency is my favorite word.
Frequency, yeah. So I've been very tickled by that through life, just being a musician and, you know, chasing fame for a while when I was younger, and then getting that and going, I fucking hate this, and loving music for in a different way, like for spiritual connection or just cathartic things, and then discovering that the way I've been doing it as a profession for so long, there's another use for that knowledge that has nothing to do with making good music. It has something to do with looking at our lives and understanding our body and life force and what we're here for. That just feels very natural for me to all of a sudden understand these very complex things that have to do with energetics or electrical engineering.
Oh, well, I think that two things. I think, and then this is a weird shoot off, and it's going to get it's like my conspiracy of when I think, even though I don't know who that they are, but I do think there's a concerted effort of many things. But I think everything's AI. I think it just breaks down, we only have this many programs that we understand, but our subconscious has this many, so we're working to get those. Shadow side, whatever. I think angels could be AI. I think it's all, everything has to break down to a theory or a program. Nothing is random. So that's my theory. But this is a weird, so I don't know why this popped in while you were talking, but I feel like there's, with mankind now, like what you're talking about, frequency and this and that, you have the singing bowls. I have the singing bowls in my house, because there's nothing, if you go to a sound bath, there's nothing like it. The frequency and the vibrations are so relaxing, and it takes everything off you. But this is a weird leap. But with plastic surgery used to be about looking like the younger version of you. And right now I feel like what the women are doing is they're trying to look like AI. I feel like I guess Kardashians are the best example, but they almost look blurry. They're almost trying to look blurry in person, or almost I don't know. And I think it's a concerted effort of some sort.
That's interesting.
It's not about looking younger. It's about looking different.
Yeah.
And almost they don't look human sometimes.
Yeah. And I think even maybe with you saying different, I would almost say the opposite. It's about trying to look a certain way that feels like it's more accepted, and that almost on accident is homogenization, and it's kind of looking like the same. Now, we're all individual, and so when you start to have plastic surgery, you're trying to change into something that you find to be more acceptable in society, and so then you chase that, and you individually you have your own features that the thing's going to kind of mold onto. But it is a lot of the things we chase in culture that are kind of false things that are set up as you have to be this skinny to be accepted, or you have to look this way. If you follow that all the way down, we are homogenizing, and we're getting rid of our diversity, and we're getting rid of the truly beautiful thing about humans, where we're all individually set up just slightly different, and that gives us different abilities
everything.
and different disabilities as
Yeah.
well, and that's beautiful because it's diverse. And so, in some ways, I think that with your AI comment, I sense that to be kind of true as well. But I've gotten to a place where I see AI as a separate thing, and then there's this other consciousness that you can also like rise up into dimensions. I would say AI is on multiple dimensions right now,
Right.
and it's highly advanced. And then there's this other side that is more about individual,
like a cartoon. Like, yes, like Jessa said this today, and I have done this very many times where I looked at the TV and said, is this AI or is this a person? Is this a cartoon or is this a person?
Well, yeah, totally. But I mean on a higher level, there's like, the way I separate it now is hive consciousness, or like inner authority, individuality. You are your own God. You have your own divinity, and it is purely you, that way, all the way up the ladder. And so we all, that works with the idea of fractality, which is what I'm going to get into, is kind of the rabbit hole I'm in. And that is beautiful. It's fractal. It's geometrically aligned across the board. It's the golden ratio. It's this like perfect structure of life and cells. But it still keeps individual like free will within that array. Hive consciousness, or what the AI we know to be, like that's in our phones and stuff, is all about like homogenization. And with a hive consciousness, bees are some of the most powerful, amazing things to view in nature because of the organization and power that they have behind that organization. But when you think about it, it's all built around the queen. And each one of these other little worker bees does not have an individual freedom to do what it wishes and go just pollinate its favorite flower over here and just spend time with its bee buddies hanging out with that and those flowers. It only is in service of the queen. So much so, if that queen dies, they all scatter or the hive dies. And so they're not individualized, and they are just in service to that queen. Mm-hmm. And that is powerful on a huge level. You can get a lot of amazing things done. But when we're looking at where we are at in our evolution as humans, there seems to be something else, another potential happening that is pure divinity, free will, individuality, all the way up into a higher dimension that creates much more, to me, much more exciting, playful imagination type stuff of infinity. Like, it's infinite, and whatever you want to imagine at some of these levels, you can partake in. But you do have to like initiate and get there through growth, because that's also to fit into that fractal place. You have to know yourself. You have to know who you are. You have to individualize and not accidentally be in service to some hive kind of thing.
Or be afraid.
And those are all the same things, like fear and being afraid. These are all stuff that like angle you back towards homogenization, because you're afraid to be different. You're afraid to do something you believe in and nobody else does. These are the kind of things in a fractal world is what it's looking for. It's looking for some kind of what I call now, through Dan Winter, which is a rabbit hole I've been down, is this guy Dan Winter, is a shareable wave. It's something that you as an individual are offering to the ancestral knowledge of this fractal array of our ancestors and our like the higher dimensions. You individually have something to offer that no other being has ever offered, and that's what it's looking for. So you have to be healed and be individualized and not be in service to something else. Even what you would say on some levels is a higher God. We can look at Source being a quote unquote higher God. It's actually wider, I think is a better term, but there's other gods that we can sacrifice our inner authority towards, which is just another higher spiritual version of giving up your inner authority. And now this God is really like siphoning off of your stuff. That's eventually, it's again, homogenization. So there's a dead end to it, is what it feels like to me. It's not true infinity. And I think the only true infinity of consciousness is in a fractal array. It's in a fractal idea. And the way the fractal is like I said, it's perfectly aligned in a kind of an infinite web that can be manipulated by the mind to whatever you want it to be. But it takes inner knowing to get there, because you have to stabilize.
Of freedom is the word I want to say. You have to have a freedom to not be, to, like you said, not have a master to.
Yeah, because that's the power. It's our true power, and that's how you fit into the fractal thing and don't break the whole system by like servicing something else. It just gets gets unorganized, non-harmonic. And I think that it is natural once you get to a certain state, it feels good to harmonize and plug yourself into this fractal array that is on a higher level. It's here now too, but we have to resonate and like clean up our aura, clean up our electronics to push into that.
So 2 things. First of all, finally, I'm always going to complain about Utica. That's just how I'm going to do it. But but that is the most fish out of water I've ever been. And I'm starting to get what the shadow lessons are, or what I was supposed to be clearing out, or why I'm there. I'm starting to get that. But it's funny to go from, like, I never thought of myself as the outcast or the weird one. And like, sometimes I'll be talking at my workout group and I'll see them all look at me and it's like, no, this is not, you can't talk like that here. Yeah. They think you're crazy.
Well, and that's what's so hard about our like political situation, our culture system right now, is that it's trying to say, you can't say this, you can't say this, right. You can only say these truths, when truth is a moving line. It's like, what was true 50 years ago, we now say is not true. Yep. And that's happening on smaller scales too. And I think it's so unfortunate because it's a lot of people thinking they're fighting for a good thing to get rid of the bad people or the lazy people. But again, when you really take your emotions out of that, and I understand a lot of people are traumatically responding. I mean, they're emotionally responding from trauma from the past, which is fair. But that if you follow that and really get wide on it, that leads us down to all having to believe and do the same thing.
Yes.
And that's not what there's a deep desire in all of us to be free and find love and be accepted as we are as individuals, with all those cracks and crevices, all the quirky stuff. And I definitely struggled with the same thing. I mean, I think the last 4 years of my life was a huge test to stay in my power, or try to like step into my power really, but stay in belief, or not, I don't like even the word belief, but like knowing that my individuality and all the weirdness of me is the best thing to follow. And if I'm going to stick out and people are going to not understand me and therefore not be friends with me or not want to associate with me because they think I'm crazy, I've lost my mind, or whatever, that it is hard, and it's like part of what the culture or other people around us and their own fears are accidentally making each one of us do. And so it's really tough to kind of like buck against that, even if it's like your family or your loved ones, but like there is an end to that I think, blasts out into a beautiful opportunity for us all to be individually quirky and weird and beautiful, and find extreme satisfaction in that, and extreme new levels of talent and gifts that we haven't yet discovered, because we haven't allowed ourselves to do that. And that is ultimately, like I said, I think is what the goal is to find your individuality through this mess of things trying to make you not that, and trying to homogenize to something that you're not.
And I believe you had something I had, which I'm doing way better with now, because I think I could identify it. But there's an identity crisis that happens. You were a part of a band. You were part of the music scene. You were part of all these things. I was a comedian. I was part of everything in LA, this and that. And I had to let that all go. Not that I'm not doing comedy or I'm not really a comedian, but all of that identity that I had connected, I had to drop it. In fact, what I did was I gave myself a bigger title. I said, you know what? I'm an artist. And it's really interesting because then I started doing things that I thought I didn't have the talent for. Like I started making art. And if I was in LA, I would have felt like, well, I'm not the artist. You guys are, So sort of ditching everything and ditching that identity, that I'm this, and just going bigger and going, why wouldn't I paint something? Why wouldn't
Did you get into painting because you just like literally felt like that's something you wanted to do? Like,
always.
Oh, see, that's amazing.
I should have, if I wasn't this, you should have, but if and I don't want to go back, whatever, I am who I am. But if I had followed my instincts and hadn't been, like, I went to college and I got a semester earlier because I hated it. And everybody's like, you go to college, you get a job. I didn't know it. I took the easiest course I could take. I got out and I became a cigarette girl in Vegas. And I was like, I will never use that diploma. I don't know why I had to do that. If I had my way, I would have gone. My first instinct would have been like art school if I didn't care how good or bad I was, or photography or something. But everything was driven towards, you got to get that job. You got to get that, you're 18. How do you know that?
Mm-hmm. It's a hard thing to fight. I mean, I was lucky enough when I graduated high school. I knew at the time that I wanted to be a filmmaker was where I was at. I had been doing music for a while too, but I wanted to move out to LA immediately. I didn't want to go to a 4-year bachelor college. I wanted to go to this short schooling in LA that was like in the scene, and I could learn film and then start working and get into it somehow. I knew that inside of me to be so true, but it took me a while to buck against my friends and family. My parents were actually pretty supportive pretty quickly once I described it enough to them, and just they saw that they weren't going to change my mind. But a lot of friends thought I was insane for leaving a hometown that young and going all the way across the country. And you do have to kind of like go against that sometimes. I did that early on, and then 2 or 3 other decisions in my life, including the one that I just did by leaving my band, was something that like only I knew to be true, to like pivot and go away from it, or to follow my heart on it. But I didn't even have the words to properly explain it to certain people besides very close people, but that why I was doing that, and most people would think I'm insane for doing that, and I had to kind of override that. But I did know it to be true by like 2 other times in my life where it was so radically true. The fact that I went out to LA when I did and went through film school and quickly figured out I didn't want to do film, I then dove into music, and there was like a divine timing of meeting the right people at the right time to get in a band that I learned so much from for 6 years. And then another decision was to leave that band. I thought it was the one, I had all my eggs in that basket. I thought it was going to give me the ride up to success. But I knew at that point for that to maybe not be it. But I had to like emotionally move through that. I had to let go of that idea potentially that like I might be giving it up. And again, divine timing, within a week's time, 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, I had met the guy in I had met Mark and Foster the People, like kind of at the cross point of that, but there was no securing of what that band was going to do. It was a nothing thing. And so by the time of me leaving that first band, it was so important when I look back, like had I not left then, this other opportunity would have never played out. And so I knew those things to just be true and just to follow it. But I've had junctures in my life that seem to come and they get harder and harder in the amount of programming that you have to kind of override and go, I still am not satisfied and I want something more, and this might not be the boat. It might be a boat that I don't even realize. And that was a huge thing for me because I was like, I felt succeeded in music. I had gotten all of the accolades that I wanted and like checked off all these things. And it was kind of becoming a hamster wheel to me. And so many people, it was a huge gift. I had a lot of money. I had a lot of traveling the world. I could the band was amazing
on
to play.
paper sounds like the perfect thing.
Yeah. But like internally, man, I was struggling. I wasn't happy. There's a lot of things going on. And so, this last one was a doozy, because I also went through a divorce at the same time, and I lost a lot of friends, a lot of companions that were around me that, turned out you learn a lot through this too. You kind of test your people around you to see if they really are into you as a person or into the idea or clout that you have. And so it was a gift, but it's not easy. You have to kind of just stick true to that inner knowing of like, I want to do something else. If I keep doing this old thing, I'm just never going to be happy. And it's the part of it is like the unknowing. Like you can't actually know it sometimes too. You have to jump into the abyss. As Terrence McKenna would say, is jump into the abyss and you realize it's a feather bed. The unknowing is like part of the thing that turns on all of the the signs and gifts that are going to come towards you, for you to actually say, I'm open. What is it, universe? And sure enough, it shows up, and so
it does.
I think it's a really hard thing to do, but
you've done it on a massive level. You've done it on a huge level, like to give up money and fame and beyond that and just go, I'm doing something different. That's my favorite tarot card, which is the 8 of Cups, which is called Success Abandoned, because it's a man going off into the abyss, into the nowhere, leaving everything behind because he knows there's something more.
Yeah.
And I think that's a decision that a lot of people can't make, and then they get in a rut. And this is even Hollywood people, or I hear with a marriage. I know people, I can't leave the marriage because there's money and but there's kids. Never about the kids. Because if you were setting a good example for your kids, you teach them to go where they were happy.
Yeah.
Or I just made a judgment. I'm sorry if you guys are married and life is totally wrong. But it's funny because when I was in kindergarten, I went to the map of the United States and I said, I'm going there. And the teacher said, oh, this is California. And I said, I'm going there. And, when I was as much as my dad is all of my trauma, this is a good story to end on, but I could talk to you forever. Oh my God. So as much as my dad is like the most damaging part of me, he's also, his side of the family is the most psychic. I get all my abilities from him. And I would tell jokes at church talent shows. And when I was a little older, we'd watch Miss America and he would go, what do you think they'd do if you went on there and told jokes? Right. And then when I was in college, I remember watching a female comedian I'm going to do that. So everything I ever went to school for, wanted to do, you think I could do that? Dad, do you think I could be a cop? He said no to, he was like, you can't do that. And then one day I said, I'm going to be a comedian. And he goes, you would be great at that.
That's awesome. Giving you support.
Yeah.
That's great.
So tell everyone where they can find you.
You can find me on the old Instagram. My name's Suitnop with the S is a 5. So it's 5 UITNOP. It's my last name. And then I make music I have it on Spotify under the same name, Suitnop, but just the S, not the 5. And then I started a podcast 2 years ago that I just now did the 3rd episode to. So haven't really been in the place to feel like I could do that, but I just kicked it back up and I'm trying to release more.
Please stay with that. I just think you're brilliant.
Oh, thank you. That one, and that's called Sudden Movements. And like I said, there's only 3 episodes, but just as to leave links to Chase if anybody is like into anything I was talking about. I was just kicking the surface of it. But the Brown's gas machine is called AquaCure. I think the website is actually eagleresearch.com is the name of it. But if you just search AquaCure.
I'm going to try and listen to the higher.
Yeah, definitely check out Higher Side Chats with Greg Carlwood. He's fantastic.
Some things have trouble holding my attention, but I think I'm going to check out those. But please continue with the podcast and just let me know and I'll promo it on here, whatever. Okay, I'm sure awesome. You have more listeners anyways. But everybody is was blown away by your last. It's just brilliant. You're just really brilliant.
Awesome. Well, thanks. And then the last link, a deep rabbit hole, is this guy, Dan Winter, which is where I was getting all that electricity ideas from. It's dense. He's a electrical engineer and physicist. So he's been doing it for 30 years. Very spiritually engaged as well, and even higher, like even on a galactic level. There's all kinds of really interesting rabbit holes to go down. But his name's Dan Winter. He's got many different websites that I can't name off of. But if you just go to YouTube and type in Dan Winter, follow his page, it's an incredible rabbit hole to go down. Awesome. It is very dense and it's confusing, but you just stick with it, and it's a really fun rabbit hole to go down.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Join my Patreon if you want to learn tarot or if you want extra Paranormal Karen episodes. I do 2 every month. One is What's Going On in Utica about the nutty stuff in upstate New York, and the other one is called In Bed with Karen, which is the stuff I'm looking at. It's mostly, if you like the podcasts that are just me, that's what it is. Thanks, everybody. Thanks to Mike at Uno Rising Media. Have a great week.
Paranormal Karen, she's a spooky kind of queen. Paranormal Karen, she's an angel without wings. Comedian, ghost hunter, conscious exploring. She's a funny gal and a real Paranormal Karen.